So I've been making bag patterns for a while now, probably for about 5, 6 years. I've had my own line of patterns that I've published as PDF files and have sold on my website. Now, my current design process up to this point has been very Wild West and is very well documented on my channel. The TLDR is that I just sketch out the idea for the bag on paper, come up with some idea of what the pattern pieces might look like and some rough instructions, and then I just start sketching it out on printer paper and taping it together to get some basic sizes, and then I digitize it. With simpler bags, this hasn't really been much of a problem, except that I've started to venture into things with curved corners. Actually, just to give you an idea, this is my design book, and this was a wallet that I was working on about 2 years ago until I realized that 5 other people were launching a wallet pattern that week, and I decided, I'm good. You know how I say there can only be so many tote bag patterns? Well, the same applies to wallets. So apparently there's software out there that will make patterns for you. And even though I thought it was only for garment sewing, it's for fashion design overall. You can do shoes and belts and bags. So admittedly, I did hear about this about a year ago. However, I wanted to wait until I had time to really dedicate to it before I did their 30-day trial, because to be completely honest, it's $50 a month. Now, subscription plans for things tend to add up. I already have Canva and Adobe Creative Cloud because I use those daily. But adding something else that is $50 a month was a bit much for me, so I decided just to give it a whirl and find out what I could do with it. Let me tell you how I went from an idea in my head to this finished bag in less than 24 hours. So let's take a look at Clo3d. So you may have noticed that this is titled a Seamrippin episode. That's because I don't intend to make this a tutorial. I more or less want to show you what I've been doing with Clo3d and how it was able to create this bag so freaking fast. So I'm going to go over the highlights. I'm going to show you some of the things I like, some of the things I don't like, and then we'll figure out where to go next with it. So here's the application. This is Clo3d. I basically did the trial and fell in love with it and was able to do a lot of different things, as well as hyper focus on creating a 3D model to represent the smart dolls so that I could use them as an avatar. But basically, I started to dig into, can I use this for bag making? I am more or less known for my bag patterns, not my smart doll sewing patterns, so I should probably see if the investment is worth it because it's not going to pay for itself. So we'll start off with the view. So basically you have 2 views. You have the 3D view here, and then you have your 2D pattern window view there. It took me a little bit to kind of get used to the orientation of the window and all the different pieces and how they connect, but once you get used to using both of the windows, you can really figure out how everything's supposed to look in 3D space and 2D space. Right now, I basically have the little bowler bag open in here, and I've just reset the scene so you can see how I've arranged the patterns on this avatar. So I have an avatar that I've added. The avatar is just that little cylinder, this little white thing in here. And there are different 3D shapes that you can use. You can even import your own if you want to do that, and edit the avatar to have all these little placement dots around it. Now, I'm just going to bum rush over this and then I'll show you something pretty specific in a bit. Now, I've heard you don't really have to use an avatar, but it does help because when you simulate this by pressing the space bar, don't mind the straps falling. Anyway, when you hit the simulation, there's going to be physics that are involved, clearly because the straps are falling from the sky. Now, the straps are falling from the sky for various reasons, primarily because I only needed them initially to figure out what size they need to be in relation to the bag itself. But otherwise they were actually causing some really funky behavior in the simulation, so I got rid of them. And by got rid of them, I mean just in the 3D view. You can actually hide a pattern from the 3D view and remove its sewing, so it doesn't do anything like have an adverse effect on the physics happening to that really bad faux leather in there. Now, it's not going to be 100% accurate. If we zoom in right here, you can see this fun thing just jiving along. And I've got this, this grabby hand for an icon. You can pick up and pull your fabric around to see how it behaves afterward. This works really well with the clothing, I'm not gonna lie, but with the bags, not so much. And that's just because the bags, at least this one that I'm making, has a lot of structure to it, and so it's gonna lay a certain way and only that way. In fact, the reason that this is a thermonuclear orange color is because I have strengthened the fabric so that it will hold its shape right there. Now, if you zoom in, you'll see all these little red lines that are marked here on the main panel pieces and here on the pattern itself, even with a little reference hole for the rivet. So these are actually reference lines that you can use, and they're internal lines to the pattern itself. They don't necessarily get stitched out, but they can be used to stitch too. So when I had my straps in there, I actually used the square to adhere them to the main panel of the bag. And of course, for those of you who are weak at math like me and don't want to think about, oh, but wait, what is this now if I add on the seam allowance? Well, don't worry, because I basically designed this without the seam allowance and then add it afterward. Looking at my current and somewhat finished bag pattern isn't really helpful, though, to give you an idea of what you do as far as workflows go. So I'm going to start a new project and just very quickly run through some of the key features so you can see what it is that I do to get to that kind of result. So back in Clo, we're going to go to File, New Project, and it's completely empty canvas. Now, over here in the library section, you can open up Avatar by double clicking on it, and it will show you all these different folders that you can dig down into. They have different models of different sizes and proportions that you would ever need. However, we're going to look at the 3D shape because that's bag making, and that's mostly what is my bread and butter anyway. So we're going to choose something a little easier to work with. And here we have this, I don't know, thing. Toaster, it's a toaster. So if we select ye old toaster, you can actually see its scale in here. Now I'm not gonna muck around with the scale or anything, but I am gonna do some extremely basic boundaries for you. So in Avatar Editor, and this is something unfortunately you generally have to do, especially if you scale it. So if you wanted this bag to be larger, then you can scale the avatar, but then you have to come into the avatar editor and adjust the arrangement. The arrangement consists of two key things. You're going to have your bounding volumes, which are the giant green blobs, and then you have points for placement. These arrangement points are along the exterior of these little like boundary volumes that you place around it. Now this one came pre-set up already with all of the bounding volumes and placement points, assuming this is going to be made into some kind of satchel style purse. So I'm going to close that avatar editor and zoom in here and just get a kind of an idea of what it is we want to do with this thing. I'm going to go super simple here, and I'm just going to make a really quick tote bag. So that's where you can do this over here in the 2D window. So basically, I'm going to create a rectangle. Dun, 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 like that. I have no idea like what the measurements are going to look like here. You can do that based off of this as well to kind of get a sense for it. But yeah, so then we can edit the pattern. We can select it, or actually, I'm going to select the pattern here. And this was actually kind of difficult for me to figure out at first. Their Discord that they have is really popping with support. So as long as you are a subscriber, you can get that access pretty much 24/7, not just from the community, but official support people from Clo. So I need to, it's so dumb, but you have to shift, left click, then right click. And then you can adjust like the height and all of that. So we're currently sitting at 10.655 inches. Let's just give it a nice round 12 for some reason. And then over here, we'll do the same thing to the width. So again, it's really weird. You have to left click and then while holding the left mouse button down, right click. It took me forever to figure that out. But then I'll guess I'll just do like 10 inches wide. See, I'm just guessing. I'm just guessing. So I've got that one piece that is just sitting right there, and we're going to have to give it some depth. But for now, let me show you how this gets arranged. So where arrangement is involved is you have all these view options up here, and you can show your arrangement points just like that. And so you can see kind of where they go. Just to give you an understanding, like here and here would be where you would have straps and they get propped up. So they would basically sit on that point and then fall down and sew in once you have all the sewing in place. So if we click this pattern here and then go over and put our mouse on one of those arrangement points, bam, it's in there. But of course, if we simulate, it falls. So let's say we don't want to do that. Let's put that back, and we're going to try to create what would be the depth for this bag. Now, if you paid a half attention to the things that I've done in previous years regarding tote bags, then you'll kind of get an understanding for, how to create a tote bag with depth. So I am going to select this line, and that's hotkey Z, by the way. I apologize. Again, not a tutorial, just going to run through real quick. And let's say I want to do, here, we're going to split this. So we're going to go split in half, and we're going to do a uniform split. That will basically divide that line into two. Who knew? What? Math. All right, then I'm going to place an internal line in here because the thing is, I only want to edit one half of this and not have to replicate the changes on the other side. Now, my workflow, of course, is going to be different than like yours might be. So just bear in mind that unless I'm doing a tutorial on this, I'm not going to go slow, and it might be the literal worst thing ever. So now I've created that internal line, I'm just going to go and cut it so that I can then select this and get rid of it. So I only have the one side. I will fix this in a bit, so don't worry about it. All right. So now we have this one side. So I'm going to select this line here, and I want to offset it. So I'm going to assume that since that's about 4 inches deep, then I need to have this at 2 inches. So we're going to throw that line over 2 inches. So I can do offset the pattern outline, and I can do inches, and we will just throw that over there. But now we have this separate line down here, forsooth. So we're going to create our boxed corner, and we're going to offset the pattern outline and 2 inches. So like that. Magic. Now, I don't know about you, but I really can't see what is going on in the 3D window. So just to give you an idea of fabrics, we're going to come in here, and we've double clicked on fabric in the library section, and I'm going to do leather, and I'm going to find, where was it? The trim full grain leather is the one that is extremely stiff. So we're going to take that and pop it in here. And then I can click on the fabric itself, and I can just go down here and I can change the color. Now, a lot of the stuff that's here in material, like texture map and displacement map and normal maps, don't worry about any of that stuff. Just change the color. You can get all fancy pants later. And of course, I'm going to make this. Ooh, I was going to make it all pretty. Let's just do, I was going to do turd brown. We'll do turd brown. So you see this dot that's right here. So we've basically have split the center line into 2 segments. We don't want that for this. So I'm going to right click and delete that point. And that's fine. I don't need that now, because now I can select this one seam, this one line, and I can right click on it, and I can do unfold with symmetric editing and sewing. So basically, ta-da! Now if I edit this side, it will reflect on the opposite side. So if I want to click this point and go, wee, now I have devil horns. Oh, let's be serious and undo that, okay? Yeah, there we go. So we're gonna select this pattern and we're gonna copy it and paste it, like that. So now we have two. Now their editing isn't symmetric. So unfortunately I can't do that. But if I select the pattern over here and then turn on the arrangement points, wow, I can shove it back there and watch it fall. Although it's not really falling. See, I'm using that trim leather, so it has really good sturdiness to it. Okay, well let's kind of stop that simulation and put it back to where it needs to be because I haven't put any sewing in place. So now what I'm going to do is show you how I do the sewing. It's actually really easy. Is up here along the top, you have segment sewing. And you have like what they call M-in sewing. So that's good if you're going to basically select several segments along a line. So for example, when I sew the bottom here, I'm going to need to select multiple and include that in the first half of the seam and then the other half. So it's kind of weird, but it does work very well. And it's very important if you do anything with pleats and gathering later. So for the sake of simplicity, we're going to do the segment sewing because I might as well just show you the way that it's done anyway. So for here, we're going to start with our side seams. So we're going to take this seam, and it's very important for you to watch how this is done in this window here because the patterns and the way they're arranged on the 2D pattern window aren't exactly what you'd think. So my brain is going this seam to this seam, which would be incorrect. You see it's on the opposite side? No bueno. So you actually need to pay attention to that. Also, the little notch that's right here, this thing that keeps shrinking and I can't show you very well, that's the start point. So that matters because each side needs to match up. So we're going to take that. That's our first segment. Hit enter. The directions are on the tooltip for what it's worth. And that side, that's what you want to see, not a crisscross across the middle of the avatar. So we'll click that and press enter. And then it will calculate the stitching and you have the stitching in place. Now, because we have symmetric sewing on this piece here, it went ahead and it mirrored it to the other piece. The actual editing of each of the points though, not the same. Okay, now we're going to do the bottom. And we're going to do this by selecting the bottom on the first piece here and then press enter. That seals that deal. And then here and hit enter. And there we go. So if we simulate now, Bob's your uncle. We got a little tote bag. That was not that hard, was it? Now, of course, things are all kind of wrong because we have holes at the bottom. So, of course, now you're like, well, how do we handle that part? Well, that's actually not that difficult. Now, you just handle doing the seams in the corners. For this part, I'm actually going to use the free sewing option because it's a little easier to follow where your mouse is and what the seam line is going to look like. So let's say we start way back here. So we're going to start at the center part and imagine you're squishing this together. So you can see the little green dot. So we're going to start there and we click and we go here and we're going to start again from the center. But of course we have to go over here. So now move this so you can see. So you see we want to start and move up in that direction. That helps me kind of narrow down where I need to put the line. So I'm going to click and go up like that. That's the first segment. So I'm going to hit enter. And then I'm going to go from, we're going to choose here and go over like that. Boop, like that. That's that segment there. And then from the middle right there. And I'm going to hit enter. Ta-da! And just to double check, we have it on the other side as well. You can press the space bar to simulate. And there's your tote bag. And just because I can waste a little bit of screen time on this, you can come in here and use the top stitching tool to put top stitches on your seams. That's pretty darn cool. Not only that, but up here in the object browser, it will create this default top stitch for you. And it's gonna, for whatever reason, take forever to load it. But you can change the offset from the seam. So let's say we want this to be 1/8 of an inch away, or even if we want a little more impact to make it a little touch more decorative, 1/4 inch away. We can change the color of it, and you can change the thickness of it. So right now it is set to a default of 40. So we're going to change this to 90, and now it pops. Now it's like leatherweight thread. That's awesome. That's really it. That's all I kind of wanted to go through and show you, is the highlights of it, and just like how much my brain has been completely expanded by finding this tool. Oh, and I guess it would have been useful to show you that it does export to a PDF file with all of your internal lines, your notations, anything else that you think might be useful when taking this pattern and potentially cleaning it up in other software. Now, this isn't to say that the application is completely flawless. In fact, there's a couple of little quirks that have driven me up the wall. So much, in fact, I've kept a list. My first complaint is that you can't do any bulk editing of the avatar itself. You can expand the avatar by scaling it up, down, you can change its position, but the bounding points and the arrangement points don't necessarily follow you when you do that scaling. Not only that, but you can't do bulk editing of the boundary areas or the arrangement points to just select them all and scale them up the same way that you did the avatar. Editing curves is something that is rather new, and so doing it in such a way that allows you to just type in, hey, I just want this line to match this other line when you mess up and you didn't do symmetric editing, that drive you up the wall. Some things you're going to have to fake. In clothing land, sometimes like okay, think of a cuff. So you've got a cuff on a t-shirt. Typically, that's going to be a longer piece of fabric that's folded in half and then serged into the seam. In Clo, you're not going to be able to do the fold over without it causing a lot of really weird clipping and flickering in the simulation. So instead, people just kind of go, I know that when I export this, I'm going to have to double the height of it, so no worries. That's what I had to do with the strapping. You can actually have zippers in there that are functional per the simulation, but for the purposes of what I was doing, which was just to get a good starting point for this bag, I just put down a rectangle piece of fabric that matches the width that I need for the zippers, number 5, naturally, and gave it a zipper texture. So I'm not trying to pitch this to anybody. I mean, you can buy whatever it is that you want to buy, but I gotta say that I'm super happy with the fact that I was able to spend less than 24 hours mucking around in an application only to have something that was pretty much spot on come out on the other side. The only thing that I had to adjust coming out of Clo was the fact that I wasn't entirely confident in the size of the circles to make sure that they were tight enough to handle the 3/8 of an inch seam allowance. Typically, creating a bag like this probably would have taken me a week of all of my spare time in the evenings being dedicated solely to that thing and hyper-focusing for hours on end trying to test it and get the circle to be the right size. Anyway, I invite you to give it a shot, see what you think. They do have a 30-day free trial. Bear in mind that after that, you have the option of like continuing it or not continuing it with the sub. There's already a lot of really good sources that are out there. So what I'm going to do is in the little description section below the video, I'm going to give you some channels that I have basically used to learn more about Clo3d. So you don't have to listen to me drivel on for hours before you get any kind of information on if you want to even give this a try or not. Anywho, feel free to always comment below and let me know what you think. If you do want me to dribble on for hours about specific features in Clo or how to do a specific thing, I don't mind doing that for anybody. I am usually looking for some kind of content that doesn't require me to put on a buttload of makeup anyway. So thank you so much for watching, and I'll catch you on the flip side.